RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, September 9th, and we'll be taking a little bit of a review of yesterday's, not last night's, but yesterday's. Well, I mean, if you were on FanDuel, it was last night also. But yesterday's NFL DFS slate. We do the review on Mondays. Also, who we bring in on Mondays? It's alliteration. Mondays with McCool. James McCool, the co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. If you want to learn about the game theory of DFS, if you want to learn all the concepts of, how to play the game of DFS, go to theoryofdfs.com. We have 2 audiobooks, one for beginners, one for advanced players. We've got some Excel tools. Go check that out. We got week 1 in the books, almost in the books. We got tonight's showdown slate, which later today we got crunch time later today. We got baseball also. We got Grinders Live. We got crunch time later today for the Jets 49ers showdown slate. So check that out around 7:30, 7:45 here on YouTube. You'll see the thumbnail and stuff. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Give me those thumbs. I will wave them at you. If you did well, if you didn't do well yesterday. I did in the middle yesterday. Middle, kind of in the middle. Yeah, around in the middle. A little bit up. A little thumbs, kind of maybe slightly up. Profitable day, not much profitable of a day, but it was what it was yesterday. James, how was your first slate, first day of NFL?
Well, I mean, I played the showdowns ahead of main slate too, right? And those went terribly, but the main slate, I thought it was okay. I ended up down about 40%, something like that, somewhere around there.
And you're just playing to be fair. I just want to highlight you're only playing GPP, so minus 40% is just another day in the office.
That's fine.
I'm playing cash games on both DraftKings and FanDuel in addition to my GPP play. So when I say that I had a mixed day, it's kind of like my cash games kind of made up for my GPPs. I lost a little bit, but DraftKings cash I won I think 90+% of my head-to-heads. So that makes up. And then of course I have all the props and stuff, and I made a little bit on the props, even though Zamir White holding penalty and then a fumble sealed my fate on that over. Other than that, props went pretty well. Yeah. But James, GPP wise, where did you go? I mean, we'll look at results DB in a second. Yeah. How did you view the slate from a GPP perspective? Like, what was your main thought process of like who's too overowned, who's too underowned, where are you getting leverage? What was, because you typically play like maybe only 2 or 3 lineups. So what was your main strategic, thoughts Sunday morning of like, where do I want to go that's going to be different, and where do I want to go that's going to be the same?
Yeah, the main thing was that cheap Cincinnati wide receiver. That was like the main thing. That was just like, why are people doing this to themselves? I thought overall the chalk mostly made sense. Like, I didn't have any problem with Tyreek Hill. I had Miami as the top overall stack, as most people did. So Tyreek Hill chalk was fine. Kyle Pitts chalk I thought was good, not great. 4,700 for somebody. If you consider Kyle Pitts to be an elite tight end, then that's probably about $1,000 too cheap. So based on how you viewed Kyle Pitts coming into the year, I think that he probably was priced fine. I didn't mind him at 20% owned. Tight end is always just kind of a crapshoot. As far as like Rashad White was the other kind of big running back chalk, right? I think it was 31% owned in Wildcat. I thought that was weird chalk, but I didn't find any reason to be like, I'm not going to touch this guy. He was priced fine. The median was fine. It was all fine. But when you ran, I have a tool over at Paydirt called the Pivot Finder, which basically says, you can put in a range of money and a range of projection, and you can see all the players that project within that range and within that projection of a specific player. So Rashad White, if you looked at running backs plus or minus 500 points and plus or minus 3 fantasy points in median projection, there was like 10 other guys you could pick. Like he just projected right in the middle of all these guys. Thought that Aaron Jones was a much better pivot off of him at basically the same price. So I didn't really understand why he was heavy chalk there. I played him in one of my lineups with Aaron Jones just because I didn't need the extra volatility of not having him, and it was in a Washington stack. So I thought he was fine, but overall, from a GPP leverage standpoint, I thought the main thing that you just could not do this week was play that 3K Cincinnati wide receiver, Yoshisivis or whatever his name is. I cannot pronounce it. He was the main huge bad piece of chalk this week, and I thought that was really easy to see coming.
Well, I think he was, in certain constructions, I thought he was fine. I mean, you could still, we always talk about lineups, not players. It's not just like one guy, but yes, as far as like, if you were going to play Yosivas plus Tyreek Hill, because that helps you get a Tyreek Hill, right. Like you got to play your lineup much differently. Everything else in your lineup has to be like, you're going to be competing against a lot of lineups if you're playing that type of construction. So like I did play Yosivas in some lineups with Tyreek Hill, but they were primarily Trevor Lawrence stacks. So finding a way to play Tyreek Hill not as a one-off. So I didn't play Tua as a stack. I played Trevor Lawrence plus one of Kirk or Brian Thomas plus Engram with his one catch for 5 yards. I mean, it's not like tight ends did. Tight end wasn't the make or break position yesterday. And then in those lineups, Tyreek Hill, Iosivas, and then getting different in one running back spot, different enough in one running back spot. The two running backs that I was the highest on, because we had Chalky. If we bring up results DB, I'll show the milli, the $100 milli at least, because the $5 milli is actually so large that I don't even know if we could even suck it into results DB. But I'll throw that up on the screen. Yep, there we go. Okay. So you see here, if you go to rotogrinders.com/resultsdb, this I believe is free. It may just be for premium people, but I think it's free. But you can check out all different types of contests from yesterday. So we had all the Mega Millionaire, the Double Up, some of the the featured contest on DraftKings. And you can do this for like MLB, for PGA, we've had results DB for quite a number of years. So definitely go here if you want to just take a look at people's exposures and take a look at winning lineups, how many, with ownership, everything like that. We could see here in the $100. So I brought up the $100 one. And then also here's the play action. And one thing that I noticed, if we filter by running back, the running back ownership got me this week. We filter by ownership. Okay. So we take a look at, here's the ownership in the $3 play action. And, $3 play. Like, I didn't expect, I don't know about you. I didn't expect the ownership to run out this way. I thought Rachaad White, I thought would be the highest owned running back. And I thought Kamara would be number 2. And then I thought Achane would be number 3. And then it would be like Walker, then Bijan. Like something like that. That's how I viewed it. Walker ended up being the highest owned running back on the entire slate. I played less of him, and actually I played him in my cash lineup, so that's why I did well in cash. Because I played him over Drake London or Chris Carr. Like, instead of a 4 wide receiver lineup, I played Kamara, Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker with Neighbors, Yoshivas, Hill, Pitts, Panthers defense with -1, but who cares, and Anthony Richardson. So that's why I did well. I expected Bijan to be a little bit further up. Like, my biggest stances at running back were different was Bijan and Joe Mixon. Only because Bijan was in a price range where more people were going to be playing Tyreek Hill. and not being able to get to Bijan Robinson. So I had lineups that didn't have Tyreek Hill, but that had Bijan in it. And then a lot of people wanted to play the Texans passing game. And I stayed away. I didn't play any. I played 50 lineups in the $5 milli. I played 0 CJ Stroud stacks. Now, I did play A-Rich on one side. If that game would shoot out, I would think Anthony Richardson ends up with more points than CJ Stroud. And I didn't want to have to predict what the receiving work for the Texans was going to be. Because Tank Dell was the cheapest one at 5,500, and that's not all that cheap. Right. So, like, figuring out what the double stacks are going to be for like, I'm going to waste too many lineups thinking that way. So the leverage on those is Joe Mixon. So I'm just like, I'm going to take the running back from the team instead and play that. Unfortunately, in my A-Rich lineups, I did not have Alec Pierce or Doolin or, I mean, my Pittman lineups, right? Yeah. Richardson, add Mitchell, Kalen Granson, tight end. The tight end didn't even matter on this slate. So I don't really care about getting like no points at tight end. So it's a lot of the other pieces. Just Bijan Robinson at running back. Bijan Robinson is the new Alvin Kamara. Is there a better way of putting it? He's someone that obviously under Arthur Smith probably was not used correctly, but someone that could literally touch the ball 25 times in a game, high value touches and receiving work. He could score 40 points. He has the upside for all of that. So I'm perfectly fine if I'm not going to play Tyreek Hill to play someone like that, especially in a running back slot that most people aren't paying all the way up for. Right. There were enough 5K, 6K receivers that I could play otherwise. So that was kind of like, and Joe Mixon, 6,600, people think that, it's Bengals Joe Mixon. Well, I mean, we saw the Texans last year just ram the ball with Singletary and Dameon Pierce. And, if they're up, like they have no problem just giving an entire workload to a running back. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to take a shot. Week 1, we don't know anything, right? We don't know. Hey, it could have turned out that Joe Mixon has 12 touches, right? It could have turned out that Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier is on the field 55% of the time. Right. We don't know. I just figure I'm just going to lean into those situations where I see so many people playing Drake London. I'm going to play Bijan or Kyle Pitts. I'm going to play Bijan Robinson. So many people are playing Stroud stacks. I'm going to play Joe Mixon, right? So so many people are going to play Rashad White. So you know what I did? Played some Baker Mayfield stacks. The problem is that, Kate Otten's in there. It's Evans plus Otten or Godwin plus Otten. And another problem is that I had a spot in those lineups for like a 5K level receiver. Yeah. And why am I going to play Christian Kirk in that lineup? Why am I going to play Drake London in that lineup? Well, I'm just going to play Terry McLaurin in that lineup because he's on the other side of the game. And apparently the Commanders just don't mind throwing to 8 different receivers when they do throw the ball for 93 yards. Right. It's just basically Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson and it's just the backfield and that's it. And good luck figuring out what the receivers are going to be. So like that was my kind of thoughts on the slate. And I wanted to stay away. To me, the stay away places, I wanted nothing to do with the Bills. Nothing. Oh yeah. I didn't want Josh Allen. I didn't mind James Cook, but I'd rather play Mixon over Cook. I just thought the last half of the last year, they're not as pass heavy as they used to be. And the receiving core is who the hell knows. Mm-hmm. So like, good luck figuring that. Like I purposely stayed away, James, from playing stacks where good luck figuring it out type of stuff. Like Jaden Daniels, good luck figuring it out. Right. Mm-hmm. Caleb Williams. Plus, you got Moore and Allen and Odunze and good luck figuring out what the double is, right? Just good. I'm just going to play the places where I kind of know. Maybe the A-Rich one is not a kind of, we don't know anymore. So that's, and then of course, not being way underweight on Devon Achane, but I thought he was going to be much higher owned than he was. So it turns out, in retrospect, I didn't mind Devon Achane at what, 15%? What in the $100 milli, he was what, 15% owned? I thought that's fine. I thought he was going to be maybe like 22 to 25% owned. And the same thing for Kamara. Like Kamara, it's like I thought he was going to be 22 to 25% owned. He came in at 17.9. It's like, okay, that ain't that bad. But Kenny Walker at 27% owned. Like, if you told me that before the slate, I'd had Kenny Walker in my GPP lineups. Not a ton of them, but that would have been the one where it's like, yeah, good. A guy that catches like one ball out of the backfield and has Zach Charbonnet behind him, right? Like, I like the spot. I played him in cash, but 27%, I don't know. At running back, so James, at running back, based on your projections and then what we see now as ownership, is there any places that maybe you would have gotten a little bit different had you known someone was too high, too low? Because obviously you run your own projections. I'm using a combination of the Blitz and RotoGrinders projections. So do you see any discrepancies there? And what are your thoughts of running back from yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, Kenneth Walker came in way higher than owned than expected. I had him projected for about 17% ownership, which I would have been fine with. I don't even think that he was projected higher than Rachaad White across the industry. I'm pretty sure that Rachaad White had the highest ownership projection in the industry. So this is another one of those instances where we talked about it a lot last year, and it's kind of showing its ugly head again. I think that contest sims and a lot of kind of like quote unquote the zeitgeist or whatever you want to call it, right? Groupthink is that there are a lot of people now thinking more about pivots that they can make off of like, oh, well, why would I play this guy when I can have this guy? And I think that that combination of things, that groupthink and the contest sim stuff, is really showing like, last year we had that really, really specific instance in my mind where Jonathan Taylor was projected for 30% ownership and Derrick Henry was projected for like 17% ownership. And then flip the cards and Derrick Henry is 33% owned, Jonathan Taylor is 16% owned. It's just like, okay, well, if we would have known that, then you just stick with what you had. So this is another instance of that. I did think overall that the top four that I had in projection, I guess we'll say the top five. I thought the running backs that would actually get ownership were going to be White, Kamara, Walker, Achane, and Bijan Robinson. And I'm fine with that group, with that cohort. I had a Bijan Robinson lineup with Tyreek Hill because, to your point, I thought that people would likely not have that combination. I thought they were both the two.
Who is the cheapie in that line? I mean, if you don't want to play Yoshidis, I mean, how did you fit? What did that lineup look like?
With that lineup, I had Adonai Mitchell for.
Okay. I mean, were you playing? Was that like a Richardson stack?
That was Trevor Lawrence. So I did Trevor Lawrence with Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram, with Tyreek Hill on the other side, Bijan Robinson, Chuba Hubbard with the Panthers defense, which worked great. And then Adonai Mitchell and Tank Dell opposing stackback. So
okay, no, that's a well constructed lineup.
Yeah,
I can
I
see
really
how
liked
that
lineup. That was the lineup that did the worst for me, but I really liked the construction on it. So I think that worked out pretty well, and I did really like Bijan Robinson. I thought that he was a nice priority to have if you were looking to get different with Tyreek Hill, since people likely wouldn't be making that combination. Other running backs that I had exposure to, like I said, I really liked Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones did not show up in high ownership at all, but I saw him as essentially the same play as, Kenneth Walker, where you would expect him to be a favorite, have a lead, have time of possession, stuff like that. Basically the same role. Like, I thought that he was a really good play. I did have some Rachaad White, but then outside of that, I had Jerome Ford. Really liked Jerome Ford at home for Cleveland against Cowboys, who have shown to not be that great on the road. On the other hand, Deshaun Watson has shown that he is not an NFL quarterback anymore, so that kind of sucked. But he still scored 19 fantasy points, so the process led me up there. Overall, I just, from a running back perspective, like I said, I didn't think there was any reason to really just like dive into Rachaad White and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker got there, but I mean,
look how flat. I mean, James, not to cut you off, but the point is that like your job at running back, I feel this year with so many timeshares and no one really being a bell cow is, can you find 2 running backs in your lineup that get you 20 points each?
Yeah, that's it.
And if you find them, you're good. Like, so it doesn't matter if you played Kenny Walker and Alvin Kamara or you played Jerome Ford and Aaron Jones. Like but can you get 40 points combined? Yeah, Joe Mixon scored 29.8 by himself. So yeah, that will do you a little bit better, right? But for the most part, like, can you get 20? If you played Ramondre Stevenson over Kenny Walker, I mean, like, you didn't like. It's not like you got that much. Now, J.K. Dobbins at 4,900. I mean, that's much cheaper, right? Ramondre Stevenson at 5,900. It's like you're not getting. Like, the leverage at running back doesn't matter as much unless it's a complete outlier, like J.K. Dobbins at 2% or something, scoring 30, right? So my attitude is either I'm finding a running back in the mid-range that could give me 20, or a running back that could put up a complete outlier score. And those are the guys like Achan and Bijan and, I mean, maybe not even Etienne, like, like the guys that catch a lot of passes and, you could say DeAndre Swift, but I don't think in the Bears offense he's going to be like that. But those type Kamara, even Kamara, even with Taysom Hill kind of vulture and stuff, like those types of running backs, rather than the plotters that are really just like, can they get a 4-touchdown game? It's like, well, that's a very, very big outlier. You mentioned Aaron Jones. I did play Aaron Jones. Unfortunately, I played Aaron Jones in my Daniel Jones lineups. I figured if Malik Neighbors was going to be jockey, why not play Daniel Jones with him as a way to Jones, Neighbors, Theo Johnson at tight end, Aaron Jones as the run back. But yeah, that didn't. Here's the question for you. You mentioned it before with Deshaun Watson. Okay, you have these three. Rank these 3 quarterbacks in how much they're not an NFL quality quarterback. Okay. Number 1 is Daniel Jones. Number 2 is Deshaun Watson, and number 3 is Bryce Young.
Oh man, this is a hard question because all of them should just not be in the league.
Would if you were an NFL team, wouldn't you rank Bryce Young number 1? You'd rather have Bryce Young than the other 2 because at least he's on his rookie contract and not on some ridiculous deal that you're paying them to suck.
Okay, so let's assume that all of them are going to get paid the same because I think that's important here. Right. Like if all 3 of these guys were free agents and I was going to pay any one of them $100 million, let's just say that, right? I probably want Bryce Young more than the others only because I think that he would make an okay backup QB and the others would not.
The other 2 would be better off bagging groceries in Aldi or something.
I don't even think that Daniel Jones is a backup quarterback in this league. And I don't think that Deshaun Watson would ever consider playing as a backup quarterback in this league. So Bryce Young, because I think that he's smart enough and young enough to develop a niche as a backup QB, I think that's fine for $100 million. Daniel Jones, I don't know if you have been on Twitter this morning, but this stat absolutely blew my mind. Since Daniel Jones signed his $160 million contract, he has thrown 2 passing touchdowns and 8 interceptions and 3 pick sixes. He has thrown more touchdowns to the opposing team than he has his own team since he signed for $160 million.
To be fair, he was injured for a period of time.
Who cares? That is the most insane. I mean, we memed a lot about Nathan Peterman throwing 4 interceptions in his first start, and we all got to make fun of Siege a lot for that one. But like this Daniel Jones thing, man, I don't understand how a team could possibly see this happening, understand the downside that has come with this, and decide to continue to start him unless they're tanking to build draft capital. The only way that you continue to play Daniel Jones is if you are actively trying to lose games. I don't think that Daniel Jones will win another game in his career. I don't think he'll win another game in his career ever.
Well, it looks good for Saquon that he went to the Eagles and put up a great game.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about wide receivers now. Obviously, the chalk wide receivers were Tyreek Hill, Andre Yoshivas. Then obviously in the mid-range, we had a lot of like chalky wide receivers in the mid-range. I did not expect Mike Evans to get the ownership that he did at 44% in the $100 mill. I mean, I thought he would be like 8%. I mean, it's not like he was, I thought it was going to be 2%. Obviously, a lot of McLaurin ownership were like Daniel stacks, right? And stuff like that. So McLaurin was way higher owned than I thought he was going to be. Tank Dell is there. We got Christian Kirk. We got Drake London, Godwin, Nico Collins, stuff in there. Okay, here's a question when it comes to Drake London. How did you project like the Falcons offense this year? Because I mean, that game was nasty on the Steelers side. I mean, the Steelers won without a touchdown. I mean, they literally won without a touchdown. They kicked 6 field goals. Welcome to Arthur Smith football for the Steelers. Good luck playing George. Good luck, George Pickens. James, I'm going to predict George Pickens on a slate where the Steelers play like a team like the Panthers, or when the Steelers are actually like almost like touchdown favorites over someone. I don't know when that's going to be, but like maybe they're 6-point favorites, 5.5. George Pickens is going to be 4,200, right? And he's going to be super chalk in cash and he's going to end up 2 catches for 14 yards, right? While Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and Cordell Patterson, right? You know you're in trouble when Cordell Patterson is starting getting touches, and you see the offensive coordinator is Arthur Smith. It's like you're screwed. Second tight ends are getting rushing work. It's going to be disgusting. But I think on the Falcons side, I mean, I know Kirk Cousins is not the greatest of quarterbacks, but he can deliver a ball as long as he knows when not to get sacked, which he rarely does.
Well, can he with that Achilles? Can he? Did you see like some of the clips from that game?
Yeah, but Cousins, as far as a passer is concerned, I think Kirk Cousins is the much better passer than anyone that the Falcons have had since Matt Ryan.
In general, I agree. But I really did from a lot of the clips that we saw, and like I'm not one to overreact to scheme things. I'm not one to overreact to target share, whatever. Like we have priors, we have understanding on that kind of stuff. When it comes to health stuff, especially coming off of a serious injury like an Achilles thing, he could not put weight on that foot. He could not plant on it. There's one that Hayden Winks tweeted out that is very damning. Like no pressure in the pocket, has a receiver directly in front of him, and like throws off his front foot, does not plant his back foot at all. Like he had no power behind that. So is he able to deliver those performances if he's not healthy? I don't know.
Well, if that's the case, then just play Bijan. Just
go
for the 3-yard A dot, and it's going to be check down city for a good old Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
that's fine with me.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I to that point, I mean, Atlanta looked really bad in that the QB play. I do think there's going to be a lot of content that is put out this week. I'll just get ahead of it. People are going to say that Kirk Cousins is not healthy and that he needs to be benched. They're going to talk a lot about how it was like a 90% pistol formation. They were only under center for like 8% of their snaps or something. Like that, there has already been some data that's come out on it, but it's really bad. I probably will not be touching Atlanta in the near future, but the way that I projected them week 1, to answer your question, was pretty well, right? I mean, because you had to assume that if Kirk Cousins is starting, that he's healthy enough to start. And I don't think that's the case. Week 1, I had Drake London projected well. I had him projected for about 15 fantasy points. It's fine. I'm projected for 16% ownership. He came in a little bit under that. I'm amazed at the Terry McLaurin ownership. I'm amazed at the Mike Evans ownership. Like, those are both way higher than I projected. But I think that mostly came from like, I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Did that come from content? People writing up Tampa Bay versus Washington? Like, I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's more of the. I think Mike Evans was used as run backs in Daniels, because if you play Jed and Daniels, you most likely play Terry McLaurin. Like, that was the number one. We even have this in results DB. We could take a look at Steam stacks, right? Percentage of the field that played Daniels plus McLaurin was 3.1% of all entries, right? So you can see here that, like, even Justin Fields wasn't that owned, but if you played Justin Fields, you played him with George Pickens. Right. You played Richardson with Pittman, right? Yep. You played Seattle defense and Kenny Walker, right? You could see this in results DB. So I think that's primarily where it came from.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Tyreek Hill, chalk, 35%. I don't think anyone was, I was not freaking out, but like, I was in the middle of building lineups when the tweets were coming in of Tyreek Hill being arrested, right, in handcuffs outside the stadium, going, okay, like, what does my cash lineup look like with Jalen Waddle in it, right, and no Tyreek? And I'm going through that type of stuff until obviously everything was fine. But I wasn't all that surprised. Like, I'm surprised at Richardson's ownership being high, but Pittman's ownership only being like 8%.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm looking down here. Like, I'm not like completely shocked by any of this ownership necessarily. Right. I mean, I'm going through this. I'm like, what's the lowest owned player that I played in my lineups? Like, I'm not even sure what that is. I mean, like, I didn't play any of the really, really low owned. I mean, if I scroll up, like, did I consider Jalen McMillan in like a Baker lineup? Yes, I guess, but I'd rather just play Evans or Godwin. I mean, I'm just going through. Jamar Chase. I played Jamar Chase in a Burrow lineup. Jamar Chase was 3.2% owned in the $100 milli, but I played Chase with Yoshivas. So it's like Burrow, Chase, because Yoshivas is so cheap. And then I think I played Ladd McConkey in one lineup. I think that's the lowest, 4.3%. So, I mean, these aren't like absurdly low owned stuff, but like playing Brian Thomas in my Lawrence lineups as opposed to Kirk. I think Ad Mitchell was 6% owned. I mean, I expected around there. I played a bunch of JSN, right, at 4,900. But it turns out the concerns of Tyler Lockett are unfounded, at least for one game. So what overall thoughts on, stuff that you were looking at wide receiver, things that you were surprised with, things that you projected higher, like from a player projection standpoint that the field didn't take advantage of? Because I don't really see that like humongous surprises outside of like Terry McLaurin being 16% owned. I mean, I had him at like 7 or 8 or something, and primarily in Daniels lineups. And Evans, I had like, instead of 14, I had him at 8, right? But everything else is kind of within the bands. I had Jefferson lower. I had Jefferson like more in the single digits. But I mean, for the most part, none of this really surprised me all that much.
No, from an ownership perspective, I think things mostly made sense. Tyreek Hill and Yoshivas, or however you pronounce that, they ended up higher than I projected. I projected both of them around 30%. Tyreek Hill on a little bit lower than that, but those two combined, when you could combine them, like, that's just going to boost up their stuff. McLaurin was higher on than I thought, but it makes sense since Jaden Daniels ended up getting steamed a bit. Mike Evans is higher than I thought. Makes sense when you pair him with that Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin ownership. Justin Jefferson is a weird one. I had him projected for about 4% ownership. Him and CeeDee Lamb, I both had in the 4 to 5% range. I did not expect him to get pushed all the way up there, especially with Tyreek Hill being, like in the Wildcat, Tyreek Hill is 45% out, like that you're not going to find that many people that are not playing him in lieu of Justin Jefferson. Maybe, let's see, guys that I had projected over the field. I think I probably had Brian Thomas projected over the field a bit. I liked him quite a bit. I had him project for about 12.5. I'm not sure what the projection was on him on the industry, but he showed up a lot in the contest sim stuff. Terry McLaurin as well showed up a lot in the contest sim stuff, but Terry McLaurin projecting for 14 was probably secondary to why he showed up rather than Jaden Daniels showing up mostly for his price and pairing those two together in the contest sim. That was where the Terry McLaurin ownership came from. So maybe I should have seen that as a signal that Terry McLaurin was going to be 18% owned and not 6% owned, right? Probably should have read a little bit more into that. But no, overall, look, I think that ownership and projections, kind of showed where things were going to go this week. The lowest owned person that I played in any of my lineups was Curtis Samuel at 1.8. I had a Josh Allen lineup where I did Josh Allen with Samuel and Shakur and then brought back McBride. And that was, not great, but Josh Allen scored 30. I disagreed with you a little bit earlier when you said you didn't want to touch any Bills. They had the highest team total on the slate. And in a spot where it was a high scoring environment up against Arizona, quote unquote, high scoring environment. And it was not an expensive stack. Like when you stack them up,
good luck. Is it Shakir?
No.
Is it Keon Coleman? Is it you got a million pieces? Good luck. Josh Allen, I was fine with, but who the hell do you pair him with?
Right, but I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. Who the hell are you going to pair him with? Michael Pittman?
Who apparently you don't pair.
But the point is, what did Michael Pittman do? We didn't know. We didn't know. It was Alec Pierce that gets 24 fantasy points. You're not playing him.
I mean, Richardson only completed 9 passes.
Right. Well, and we didn't know that was going to happen either. So week 1, I think, is the time when I'm the opposite of you with week 1. I think with week 1, that's the time when you should kind of take shots on these unknowns and hope that you're ahead of the field, right? Like with the Josh Allen situation, we know that Josh Allen's ceiling is higher than any quarterback not named Lamar Jackson in the league. Like he can put up more 40 fantasy point games than any other quarterback in the league because of his usage, because of his legs, because of his goal line usage. So for him to be, and I thought that people were not going to be on him because of his price at 8,000. People just didn't want to pay that much for a quarterback. But when you played him with a $5,100 wide receiver and a $4,900 wide receiver, the stack itself was not that expensive. It was less expensive than stacking Miami. It was less expensive than stacking Houston. It was less expensive than stacking not Jacksonville. It was less expensive than like 4 different stacks on the slate. So like the stack itself wasn't that expensive. I thought there was a fine time to do that, and I thought the environment was good. Now it fell flat on its face, but that's not the point of it. I thought it was a fine stack with a high team total. The only other spot that I kind of was a little annoyed about was Neighbors ownership. I wouldn't have played Neighbors at higher ownership, and he was 17% owned or something like that in the millie. Like I was not pleased with that much ownership in the millie, or I mean in the Wildcat. He was higher owned, and like I don't want a 17% owned wide receiver attached to Daniel Jones. like I wouldn't have done that. So I was a little annoyed about that one, but I thought that he was a fine play from a median perspective. Had him projected about 15. So overall, I thought the wide receivers were fine. Quarterbacks were fine. I didn't mind eating a bit of the chalk, but I did think there were some spots that were under-owned relative to what they should have been, just because of people like yourself not wanting to take advantage of the unknown.
At tight end, there were only 4 tight ends that scored double-digit points.
Yeah. Wait. Foster Moreau was the highest owned tight end on the week?
No, the highest scoring. I sorted by points.
Oh, okay. Right? Sorry. You usually sort by ownership. I was like, hold.
Sort by ownership is, Pitts is the highest owned. And of course he put up, but I mean, the highest scoring tight ends this week were 2 Saints tight ends, Brock Bowers for 4,500 on the Raiders, and then Kyle Pitts, who the only reason why he has 11.6 points is because secondary just literally forgot to cover him.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know if you saw that play. Like he was just standing, 40 feet clear of any other player on the Steelers. Just like, throw me the ball. I'm open. That's where most of his points came from. tight end looks like, I mean, we're getting to the point now that tight end may be the type of position where you just eat the fucking some 0 point, like just whatever. If you're paying more than like $3K for a tight end, like you're doing it wrong. Right?
Yeah, I said verbatim in the newsletter that I sent out, the breadcrumbs. I did some leverage breakdowns and I talked about Kyle Pitts. And this is what I said for whether I would play or not. If I was going to MME, I would likely go with Bowers for basically the exact same outlook at 1% ownership in a large portion of my lineups. But since I only build a handful, I'm just going to eat the chalk.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered either way. I mean, like, they scored about the
same. It wouldn't have mattered, but I mean, like, for him to be 1% owned, it's a perfect microcosm of what you should do at tight end.
Right.
Who's going to be the chalk at tight end? Don't play them. Like, that's a bad idea.
I mean, you could have played, like, to me, the cheap tight ends I was looking at were like Hayden Hurst, Mike Gesicki, who had a touchdown, reversed or whatever, right? And you take a look at some of these, like, 3K, Johnny Munt, right? Dawson, look, Dalton Kincaid did nothing. Greg Dulcich, you can play, some of these, Theo Johnson.
Yeah.
Jonnu Smith at 35. I mean, it's getting to the point where, I mean, even Travis Kelce probably isn't even worth the price anymore. Like, if he's going to be like 7,500 on the slate, I'm not even sure if you play him at a tight end spot. So I think tight end is going to be really ugly unless you're Isaiah Likely, who apparently is God now. Even though if you look at the snap counts, Andrews actually outsnapped him and outroted him. Just so happens that that Likely got everything. And anything on defense. Oddly enough, my most exposed defense was the Chicago Bears.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And that's but that was primarily a byproduct that was the most expensive defense that I was willing to play.
I pretty much just paired my defenses with running backs. I didn't do anything special this week. I played the Carolina defense with Chuba Hubbard. That didn't go well. I played the Vikings defense with Aaron Jones. That went great. And I played the Browns defense with Jerome Ford. And that didn't go well. But there's going to be a point, Jordan. We're going to get to week 9. It might even happen sooner. Where there's going to be a defense that's projected for 37% ownership or something. It's probably going to be like, I don't know, the Steelers
team
defense.
Against Daniel Jones, a team against the Giants.
Yeah.
A team against the
Giants. It might be week 3 or something. It won't be next week because we have the Washington defense against the Giants. And next week, mark my words, you should play the Washington defense. But it's going to come a point where there's going to be a 35% owned defense. And everybody's going to somehow try to justify it like they do every single year that you should just play this defense. And I will stand tall on my hill of broken lineups and say I will not do that. Because defense doesn't matter. Just pair it with your running back. It doesn't. Look at what happens. Oh, you're looking at defenses or tight ends right now. But, like, it's just variance, man. It's just variance every single year. I'm happy that we do still have defense. A lot of people say we shouldn't have defense as an option in DFS because of XYZ. I love it because it just basically gives us a free point of leverage whenever a defense is over 25% out. So continue to play those things. I just think that it's silly.
Heidi Watson, I believe he's talking about the tight end thing. The biggest week 1 overreaction I've heard from someone who says not to overreact. Well, the Isaiah Likely thing. Now I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah,
when it comes to Isaiah Likely. But
well,
the tight end stuff, but the tight end stuff, I think is going to bear out. I mean, like, we saw it at the end of last year also. I mean, just like, what tight ends have a remarkable target share that's worth the difference? See, the thing is, on DraftKings, like on FanDuel, this isn't a thing, right? In FanDuel, the tight end pricing is actually way too soft. But on DraftKings, the cheapest tight end, the cheapest player is $2,500. It's not like running back. The garbage running backs are $4K, right? Wide receiver is $3K. The reason why Yoshivas was a play on DraftKings is because the salary floor on wide receivers is $3K, while the ceiling is $9K. Like that range is much wider, and that's the same at tight end. where on FanDuel, the difference between a 6K tight end, like Johnny Munt is 4,500, right? So it's like you're playing Evan Ingram at 6K or Johnny Munt at 4,500. While here you're playing like Evan Ingram at 5,500 or Johnny Munt at 2,500. Like it's just so dramatically different that like the top tight ends are like more than double the price.
Right.
If not about double the price than the cheaper tight ends. And I don't think most of these tight ends, and I say even Travis Kelce, depending on how that price difference, may not be worth it versus playing another wide receiver, spending up at wide receiver, playing a 7K wide receiver with a 3K tight end versus, a 5K tight end and a 4K wide receiver. It's just like I just kind of prefer the wide receivers. Right? It says next week Andrews is 5K and likely is 4,800. Like most likely I just don't play either of them. Right? I mean, that's really the point I'm making has nothing to do with the individual tight ends. It's just that I think the tight end position we will see moving forward that the tight ends that are 5, 6, 7K or whatever versus the cheap tight ends, I don't think the scoring delta is going to be wide. Yeah, of course, the high price tight ends are going to score more points, but not dramatically more. That like I'll take my 5 points from a $2,700 tight end than the 12 points from a 6K tight end. And I'm just gonna it's more points, but those 7-point difference. Well, now instead of playing $3,700 Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm playing, $6,200 Chris Olave. So a wide receiver that like could reasonably get 30 plus points, like in that range. Like that's kind of the point that I'm making.
It's a discussion of positional scarcity and opportunity value, right? Or opportunity cost. If the expensive tight ends average 13 fantasy points, but are more than twice as expensive as the min price counterpoints, you still have more incentive to pay the min price there, because like say the expensive ones average 14 fantasy points and the cheap ones average 6 fantasy points, and you have an 8-point delta there. That difference of 8 points is still considerably smaller than the difference between a min price wide receiver who's averaging 2 fantasy points and an expensive wide receiver who's averaging 19 fantasy points. That 17-point delta is massive. I do think that it's worth saying that elite tight ends, I think, are still going to be.
They're still going to produce more. I'm not saying that they don't produce. I'm just saying the range.
Let me finish that. I still think that they are going to be more valuable in instances like you're going to see that cheap tight ends are more valuable this year as a whole. I agree with you, because the delta, I think, is going to be smaller and we don't have as many elite tight ends. But I do think that there are going to be instances throughout the year where people are wanting to pay down at tight end, and you're going to get a Trey McBride. You're going to get an Evan Ingram at like 5% owned or something, where you should look to actively pay up, similar to kind of the way that we were talking about Bijan earlier, where people didn't want to play Bijan this week with Tyreek Hill because there was just a lot of opportunity cost that you lose there. You could play Rachaad White, you could play Kenny Walker, blah, blah, blah. I think that we're going to see similar things, especially after week 1, because a lot of people are echoing a lot of your thoughts of elite tight ends, just the delta is not large enough. They're not producing high enough, blah, blah, blah. People are going to overreact to that kind of stuff, to where there's not going to be an equivalent amount of ownership on expensive tight ends that they deserve when played with other expensive positions. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make. Cheap tight ends, I think, are going to be the chalk strategy. And I think that expensive tight ends with expensive wide receivers or with expensive running backs are going to be something that give you an edge in GPPs because they are not appropriately owned. So that's my stance on elite tight ends as we move forward in this year. Right. I tend to agree that week 1 is not really a representation of what we should expect from them, but that we should expect elite tight ends to score less this year than they have in years past.
Right. And everything is commensurate with ownership. You tell me that Trey McBride and David Njoku and Kyle Pitts and whoever, Engram is, Andrews is, 2% owned on a slate, and a bunch of these 3K guys are all 10% owned. Like, yeah, sure, but I don't think it's going to lean in that direction. I don't think it's going to lean as hard in that direction. I still think people are going to say, I don't feel comfortable playing a $2,500 or 3K tight end. I'm going to play the $3,800. Noah Fant becomes like a thing because it's not, they're not 6K, but they're also not 2,500 or, like Brock Bowers becomes a thing at like 4,200. And you just look and like, I'm not sure that unless there's an outlier score, the key thing here for GPPs is outlier.
Yeah.
Like, sure. Like if you had Kyle Pitts instead of, and you played Hayden Hurst at 5.3 points and Kyle Pitts at 11.6 points, I'd rather have the extra 6 points. I'd rather have the extra 6 points, but I don't think tight end won you the GPP. Like that's not the thing that's going to win you the GPP. If you have the tight end that scores 26 points, yes, that's going to obviously dramatically separate you from everyone else. I just think a lot of slates are going to come down to the tight end. You're going to look at the Millie winner, and it's going to be some rando tight end.
Right.
You're going to look at a large field, small field. They're just going to look. It's unless there's an outlier that has some amount of ownership, someone that scores 20 plus. I'm just not sure if tight end's going to matter in the grand scheme of things, in commensurate with the scoring. So that's, I think, wide receiver. You're much more likely to see. I think you're much more likely to see some $3,800, 2% owned wide receiver. If they score 22 points, that's going to matter a lot more than whether or not you have the 6-point tight end or the 12-point tight end. Like that. To me, defense is the classic case of that type of positioning where you needed, in order to win anything of any semblance, you probably needed either the Bears, the Vikings, the Cowboys, the Saints. You needed probably the Chargers. Like, you needed at least 14 points at defense, if not Chicago or Minnesota, because so many of the defenses don't score that many points. So scoring, an extra 13 to 16 points of defense, that's like the difference between a 6-point tight end and a 20-point tight end. Like, you see that much more in defense, and also it's less predictable at defense. So, yeah, sure. And what do we say about defenses? Like, it's so high variance that we don't even bother it's just like whatever fits, and then hopefully you get lucky in the random number generator. I'm viewing that the tight end, the cheap tight end's kind of the same way of like, well, then if you're not going to play a 5K tight end, well, which 3K to a $2,500 tight end do you play? Because there's like 8 of them that could maybe score 10 points. Like, well, it's just like defense. So like, what defense? Like, just close your eyes and hope for the best.
Yep. With you.
James,
do you agree that not paying up for running back this year, assuming we see a lot of 6K running backs, the lack of workhouse for running backs allows you to pay up more at another position like tight end? We don't have 10K running backs that are must play.
No, I agree. I agree with that, but the position wouldn't be tight end; it would just be wide receiver.
Yeah, it would just be wide receiver.
Right.
Yeah, we're just gonna pay up at wide receiver. The key last year and the key this year will be paying up at wide receiver. That's just what we do now. We pay up at wide receiver. We have paid down at running back, or as much as we can
mid-range,
at running
back.
Right,
the $5,500 to $6,500 range for running back.
We pay as far down as we can at running back. We pay as far down as we can at quarterback most of the time, unless it's Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, and we pay up a wide receiver. That's been the GPP formula for 2 years now. Before that, we paid up at running back, right? I mean, we had David Johnson's, we had Christian McCaffrey. We had these guys. We still have Christian McCaffrey, but I'm thinking this year that we're probably not going to utilize him as much this year. I think it's going to be more wide receivers. So that's been the play that we have made for the last couple of years. I think that if you want to think a little bit about strategy, and this, I guess we'll just end on this note for me, is that I think that the strategy this year is going to be a massive focus on the cheapest rushing QB that we can find and one of their pieces. Just one, not two. I do not think that we're going to see very many GPP winners that are a rushing QB plus 2 wide receivers. I think it's going to be plus 1. And I think that's going to be the trend of this year is rushing QBs are going to absolutely dominate. They have been, but they have not had appropriate ownership for how hard they have dominated. And I think that's a really important thing for GPPs this year.
James, people could find you at paydirdfs.com.
Yeah, paydirdfs.com. Big content schedule this year so far. We put together a lot of different stuff from community members. So you can actually find all of that stuff over on the site right now. And then obviously all the models and tools and algorithms and stuff like that. Lots of different subscription options and yeah, all that kind of stuff. And you can find me on Twitter at paydirt_DFS.
And if you want our tools here at RotoGrinders, obviously tonight's showdown, we got contest sims for that. We got sim labs for that, for you to make your lineups using our sims. We got lineup HQ with our projections, our ownership. We got premium expert survey, consensus value rankings, all that type of stuff for all the sports, right? It's September 9th. By next month at this time, the NHL will be going on. NBA will be coming back in about a week. We got tons of stuff. Get the combo premium package. You get $40 off your first month. We're running that promo. Click on that link in the description. We got props and pick'em stuff as well. Our pick'em tool covers almost all the sports for prize picks, underdog, sleeper, all of those the DFS 2.0 type of sites. And we also have the prop tool and our props package, which is included in premium, the combo premium, but you can get it by itself. And you can get all the, if I could take a look right now. It's like, is there anything good? There's probably nothing really that great in NFL tonight. So our prop tool, likes, something like Debo Samuel. Yeah, I have this already, but this is in our RotoGrinders prop tool. Debo Samuel over 48.5 receiving yards. We have that as 58.2%. And on FanDuel, I believe that's like plus 100 or something, or plus or minus 105 on FanDuel. So Debo Samuel over 48.5. It's something that I have. It's in our prop tool. So you could get that very easily here at RotoGrinders. Get our prop content, DFS content, get everything here. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got a showdown, pre-lock slate, pre-lock show later today, 7:30, 7:45-ish here on YouTube. You should see that coming up soon. I'll be on tomorrow. We'll talk about baseball on Tuesday, right? Tuesday is kind of our non-NFL day, but then you got Wednesday, first look for week 2. Thursday, props and pick'em for week 2. Friday, GPP strategy for week 2. It's NFL. It's all NFL all the time now because that's the only thing people really seem to want to talk about. But I'll be talking about it because that's what I do here Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern. I talk about all the things you're thinking about, mostly NFL now, in daily fantasy, props and pick'em on RotoGrinders today.